let's discover some truth together. Okay, so if we wanted to discover what is true in life, where do we start? Okay, so a lot of kind of our society tells us to start with science. Okay, so we say, I want to know what grass is. I want to know what grass is. So then you kind of study biology, right? Because biology will tell you what is in grass, what is it made out of, okay? But then you say like, well, what is, if I want to get deeper into science, well then maybe chemistry, physics, kind of geology, some of the big four branches of science. Physics describes the smallest parts of the universe and the biggest parts. Okay, so physics is a great place to go too. Okay, once you want to know what grass is, it's eventually you learn that it's made of atoms, and then you ask what are atoms, kind of after chemistry, because chemistry looks at what atoms really are. But then in physics you learn about the word subatomic particle. That means the little particles, the little pieces of matter that are smaller than the atom, such as one of the words is quarks. Quarks, Q-U-A-R-K-S. Okay, I don't really know exactly what quarks are. It's not that important to finding out truth, really. It's important if you're a physicist to know what quarks are. But really, there's something smaller than the quarks. Okay, what does the word atom mean? A-T-O-M. It means indivisible. Indivisible. Okay, so what that means, if you imagine the smallest thing in the universe, the smallest thing, okay, it can still be split in half. Okay, you kind of learn that in mathematics. The smallest thing in the world can still be split in half. Right, you get a sheet of paper and you keep ripping it in half. Okay, so you get half the sheet of paper, then you get a quarter of the sheet, then an eighth of the sheet, and it just keeps getting smaller and smaller. It never ends. Okay, so like a quark, a tiny piece of matter or material in an atom can still be split, right? It can still be smaller and smaller. So physics is trying to figure out the essence of nature, okay? But where did physics come from? If you want to know truth, we got to go deeper, right? We got to go deeper. Where does physics come from? Okay, physics was created kind of during the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment period in Europe, really. Okay, but where did that come from? Like where did the idea of reason and the idea of rationality and the idea of seeking objective truth? Okay, so subjective truth is the truth that you have with your experience from your senses. I touch this, I taste that. That's your subjective experience. But then Europeans about 400 years ago, they wanted to figure out the objective world. Okay, what we call reality, or what most people call reality, the objective world. Okay, so what is that? The outside world, like this computer I'm touching, or my face. That is the objective world, apparently. Okay, so that was the project of science, trying to figure that out. But where did science come from? Where was the origin of science? Okay, it came from the idea of philosophy. Okay, and philosophy existed in ancient India. It existed in ancient India, originally from the Indus Valley civilization. There's a river called the Indus. That's, I think, in between Pakistan and India. Okay, there was a civilization there that started as an oral tradition, but then eventually the Vedas were written, the Upanishads were written, and that is the philosophy of the Indian people. Okay, it is a great civilization, the Indus civilization. Ancient Egypt. Okay, I don't know as much about ancient Egypt. I haven't studied, but they probably had some form of philosophy, which is trying to figure out the existence of everything. What is the essence of all things? Why do things happen the way they happen? Okay. Ancient China had Confucianism and Taoism. Okay, two great different philosophies, completely different philosophies. Okay. Taoism really gets into the deepest questions in philosophy, the deepest. Confucianism was more of a social construct, right? Social conservatism, that's basically what Confucianism is. Respect your parents, respect authority, follow the rules, read history, learn from history, learn tradition. Okay, that's Confucianism. Taoism is going deeper. What is the nature of all things? Is nature inherently balanced, or is it all chaotic, right? Taoism is like, it's all balancing itself. Balance, balance, balance. Okay. We also have civilizations in the Americas. The Maya people. I can't think of the word, the Inca from ancient Peru, ancient Ecuador. Okay, these were great civilizations trying to figure out what life is, but they didn't really invent philosophy. They didn't quite get, they understood a lot of astronomy, the ancient Maya people. Okay, but the Greeks they invented the word philosophy, in fact. They invented the word philosophy. Okay, before the Greeks invented the word philosophy, they believed in myth and stories. Okay, they believed in Greek myth. So Greek myth, quote unquote, explained reality, that everything is made because of gods, different gods, right? Ultimately, Zeus was the ultimate god, the god of lightning, I believe. I don't know. I took a class in it in college, but kind of forget the different gods. But Zeus was kind of the main god. But that is called polytheism. Polytheism. Okay, poly means many. Theism means religion or God, believing in a god. Theism. So many gods. Okay, so there were the idea that many gods are kind of creating this world, and the many gods had free wills of their own. They made mistakes. They gave in to cravings. They killed each other, right? So it's kind of, the gods kind of had human anthropomorphized characteristics. But then eventually, in ancient Greece, the Pre-Socratic philosophers. Okay, let me quick look up some Pre-Socratic philosophers. The Pre-Socratic philosophers, this means before Socrates. Socrates, a really, really important philosopher. The Pre-Socratics were trying to figure out what is the universe, what is the cosmos? And the question is the cosmos, is the universe, is it ordered or is it chaos? What do you think? Is it ordered or is it chaotic? Kind of weird. Physics hasn't figured that out yet. Probably 200 years ago, physics would say it's all ordered. Everything is in perfect order. Now physics is saying like, no, it's kind of chaotic. Like things are coming in and out of existence and we can only guess where something is at a certain point. It's chaotic. We haven't figured it out yet. We have no idea what's going on in the smallest small, also the biggest big, right? Is the universe getting bigger? We don't actually know that. It seems like the universe is expanding. So like, what's it expanding into? If the universe is expanding, what was there at the beginning? What is it expanding into? Because I thought the universe was empty space, but it's expanding into emptier space. Anyways, so the Pre-Socratic philosophers, that was just their question, and people had disagreements. Okay, so I Wikipedia the Pre-Socratic philosophers. Okay, we had different theories. People thought it was is the universe completely made of water? Is everything just water eventually? A lot of people, other philosophers believed it was, like basically they were trying to figure out the essence of all things, and they all had guesses. Some of the really good ones, a guy named Democritus thought that everything was made of indivisibles, atoms. So the word atom comes from Greek, ancient Greek. That there are these little indivisible things that are bouncing around. Actually, they're falling. So like all this matter, all of this material in the world is falling and falling, and that's what's changing. So everything is just changing form. Everything is just changing form, and the deepest part is just atoms. Okay, there's no purpose in the universe. There's just atoms. Okay, that's what physics from like 200 years ago believed. Then you had monism. Monism is the idea that the universe is made of the universe is oneness. Okay, this is gaining some approval lately, kind of in spirituality. People who are becoming enlightened, you know, they're seeing that the universe is one, called the monad. It's all one thing. That's one idea. But eventually Socrates came about, and that's when we can start reading about going to the main Wikipedia page of philosophy. So I just Wikipedia'd philosophy, and Socrates is probably the first most important philosopher to study. So at this point now, philosophy is kind of in Asia and in Europe. So and this is about 400 BC, 400 years before Jesus. Okay, so Jesus is the center of history, either before Jesus or after Jesus. It's kind of funny. So time itself is Eurocentric, European centrism. Time itself, how we believe time, how time works. It was kind of created by European people. Okay, so we have before Jesus and after Jesus, right? I mean, what is for people living in the rainforest in South America who have never encountered another human group before, right? There are uncontacted peoples in the Amazon that have never seen another group of people outside of their tribe. Okay, what is time to them? Right? It's obviously not BC and AC, before Christ and after Christ. It's just all random. Okay, so Socrates is the most important philosopher, and he was the one who created the Socratic Method, which is basically figuring out what truth is by asking a question. Question. Kind of the skepticism. Skepticism is all it is asking why. Why do I exist? Why do you believe in truth? What is truth? So it's also what is. What is truth? What is freedom? Socrates was asking these questions to politicians in Athens in 400 BC. He was like that interview guy. Hey, what is truth? And he kind of proved that they had no idea what they were talking about. Okay, to learn this, I would recommend the book The Republic by Plato. 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 I'm sure you've heard of Plato. His best book is called The Republic. So Plato was the student of Socrates. Okay, so Plato is probably the most famous philosopher. Maybe Aristotle. Aristotle then was the student of Plato. So it goes Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and they all three had different views. Okay, so that's when it starts to split. Okay, Plato believed that there was a perfect world. So the concept of heaven came from Plato. So heaven was an idea created by the ancient Greeks, and then the Christians just took it and ran with it. Okay, so they took the idea of a perfect world that's not here. There's a perfect world up here. What we're living in is imperfect, right? So there's two different levels. There's perfect and imperfect. So that's kind of what Plato believed. And then Aristotle believed in a lot of things. So, for example, he kind of created the first remnants, the first characteristics of science. Kind of helped create that because he believed that everything is either earth, wind, fire, and water. Earth, wind, fire, and water. So like humans are like 10% earth, 40% water. So that's basically the beginnings of chemistry. Okay. At that time, it was called natural philosophy. Science was called natural philosophy. Okay? So if you wanted to figure out what things are made of, what are things? What are things? That's used to be called natural philosophy, but now we call it science. So philosophy definitely goes even deeper than science. So to learn about what science is, you learn about philosophy. Okay, so that's a little bit of the history. It came from, so the word was invented in Greece, and philosophy means the seeking of truth. The seeking of truth, the love of truth, or also wisdom. The love of wisdom. Okay, not just truth, but wisdom too. Okay, so let's just read a little bit about what Wikipedia says, and I'll read it, and then I'll kind of explain what it's trying to get at. So it says, philosophy is the study of general and fundamental problems concerning matters such as existence, knowledge, values, reason, mind, and language. Okay, so let's just look at that. So, the study of. So philosophy is studying. Okay, it's not meditating. That's kind of an interesting difference. Meditating versus studying. So the nature of philosophy is the conversation, conversing, and asking questions with each other. So philosophy is something humans do together by writing letters to each other, reading each other's books, for example, and just talking. Okay, but usually it ends up in an argument, but like a really polite argument where I say, "Oh, I see your point, but what about this?" And then the person B says, "Oh, I see that point, but what about this?" Okay, so it's a study of general and fundamental. So what's the difference between general and fundamental? General means big ideas, and fundamental means trying to be really detail-oriented. What are the details? What are the details? Okay, or just the general, what is truth? Problems concerning, just the word problem is kind of funny. Humans assume that truth has problems. Like, it's a problem just because we don't know. Like, but maybe it's not a problem. Maybe we don't know, and that's okay. Like, it's good. Concerning topics such as existence. So the question is, what is existence? This is called metaphysics. Existence is called, the study of existence is called metaphysics. Meta means beyond, bigger. And physics means the physical world. So what is beyond the physical world? So when you look at the physical world, what is bigger than that? Is there something bigger? Knowledge. What is knowledge? Okay, what is knowledge? What is the difference between ultimate truth and what humans know? So a really big question is, can humans, kind of small creatures on Earth, and Earth is just a small part of the universe, a tiny fraction, and the one species, Homo sapiens, can they know all truth? That's the question. So can human knowledge reach ultimate truth? Or is ultimate truth always bigger? Does ultimate truth always go further than humans can reach, right? Even if humans have a long arm and you try to reach for it, right? The idea is maybe truth is always bigger than that, no matter how hard humans try. Okay. Values. So this gets into ethics and morality. Okay. Your values. Okay. What ultimately do you value? You value your family, and the question is why? Do you value your neighbor? Do you value love? Do you value connection with humans? Okay. And what are the values of society? What are the values of America? Right? Why does America value individual freedom, and why does Japan value community and cohesiveness? Right? So why are there different values? Like what's better? Like, is love better or is truth better? Right? A guy named Henry David Thoreau, a really modern thinker from America, believed that truth is more important than love. So he said, instead of love, give me truth. Okay, so that's just an idea of values, and that's ethics. And the big question in ethics is, how to be a good person. Why would you be a good person, and how can I be a good person? To both, so a good person to the person next to you and to yourself. How can I be happy? How can I make the other person happy? It's like the golden rule, right? Don't do unto others what you don't want them to do to you. Okay, so that's a mouthful, but it's the golden rule. Like why is it the golden rule? The rule. Right? Treating others with love and respect. What's the difference between love and respect? That would be ethics, right? Why do we talk about respect at school and then love at home? Private versus public. In the public we say respect. At home we say love. What is the difference? Reason. Reason is a lot like rationality. Okay, so what is it? It's kind of like reason would be like math, logic, and science. Okay, it's would be left brain thinking, your left brain. So most people are right-handed because the left side of their brain is stronger because reason and rationality is a value through Western culture. And now the entire world is a lot like Europe, has European values because of European colonization. Okay, so history and philosophy are together. There's no difference between history and philosophy. So most people think in the realm of European philosophy because Europeans colonized around the world. But if you still go to like India and China, there's still a little bit of remnants. I'm trying to think of another word for remnants, simpler word. Remnants of the Vedas, or like the ancient Hinduism came from the Indus Valley civilization, the Vedas. So it comes from the Vedas, the Upanishads. Okay, so there's still people who believe in the Upanishads. And then in China, there's still people who believe in Taoism and Confucianism. So those are way different than Western/European ways of thinking. Okay, mind. What is mind? What is consciousness? Okay, so like in Europe and America, Canada, and Latin America, people think that mind and consciousness is the same thing. Like why do we think it's the same thing? We think it's interchangeable. And then we think our mind is our thoughts. So what's the difference between thinking, mind, and consciousness? Right? Are those three different categories? Are they all the same thing? Okay. What's the difference between mind and matter? Mind and matter. The mind-body problem. So what's the difference between your body and your mind? Right? Is there a difference? What's the difference between actually, to be more specific, what's the difference between your brain and your mind? Okay, a lot of people think their minds come from their brains. Okay, it's because that was taught from René Descartes. René Descartes, the 1500s, he came up with this dualism between mind and physical reality. Okay, so your mind is separate from reality. That's not quite a difference. Okay, so we believe in that mind and mind and the outside world are two different things, because that came from René Descartes, a really influential philosopher from France. I think France. He was French. He spoke French, I think, in the 1500s. And then lastly, language. Okay, so really good philosophers about 100 years ago. I think philosophers have always talked about language, but within the last 100 years, the problem of language. Okay, so can language? We kind of already talked about this with human knowledge, human language, right? How do we do philosophy? We have to use language to talk with each other about philosophy. Okay, so can language discuss truth? Right? When I say the word tree, an idea pops in your head, tree. Okay? What's the difference between that and the actual tree, like the tree itself? Right? The word tree and then the tree itself. right? You look at a tree really closely and you're like, is that different from my idea of a tree, right? Or do I create a tree because of my idea, right? Do humans create the outside world because they, in their minds, they kind of invented reality for them to kind of survive in? Like, oh, it's a tree because what is a tree? Well, it's good. It helps humans this way, right? The nature of a tree is that it breathes in carbon dioxide and then exhales oxygen, and that humans inhale oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide. You know, that's just a human concept. Like, what is a tree? It's just atoms, and just like, it's just made of atoms according to physics. And then other philosophies like Taoism, oh, it's just Tao, it's just consciousness, it's just there. It's not a thing. So maybe humans just invented trees because they just said, oh, tree. They point and they say tree. Or they say, what does it mean to be a thing? So like, well, I say tree, but what does that mean, right? If I have my mind over here, I hear the word tree, is that different from your tree? Or if I see a color red, how do you know? So I have the color red in my mind, or I see it, but is another person's red different? Is it the same red, right? You don't know that, right? What if my red is your blue, right? So then mind and language start to connect. Okay, so that was just the first sentence of the definition of philosophy on Wikipedia. Okay, so we could go on forever discussing each little idea, but this is a very, very good introduction. So again, to wrap it up, if you want to discover truth, a good place to start is by looking at philosophy, because philosophy is kind of the source of science. Okay, the science is based on the scientific method, and that was invented by philosophers. The scientific method itself was invented by philosophers, right? So like in construction has tools. If you want to understand what construction is, who made those tools, right? Who made them? They seem to maybe know the most about construction because they made the machines. They're the ones that invented the machines to construct new buildings. So who are those people who made the machines? So those would be kind of like the philosophers. To learn about the new idea of science, who invented that? Who invented science? Okay, it comes from the scientific method. So who created the scientific method? Okay, and then in another video we will just say like what. I talked about the limits of Western's philosophy in another video. So if you want to know about the next couple steps, I would suggest on this channel going to the limits of Western philosophy. Okay, so in this one, this is kind of step 2, because step 1 is science. Step 2 is philosophy to discover what truth is. Step 2. Okay, and then in my other video, the limits of philosophy, that's going to be the ultimate step. Peace.